So what I've been doing and what I'm trying to do on these 3 weeks is explore not so much the techniques of meditation. I'm even a bit nervous now to talk about the techniques of meditation, because if you're not careful you start to think of meditation primarily as a technique. And it's being taught very much as a technique, and there are techniques, valuable techniques, but without the sense-making context, they're a different thing. When you take something out of context, you create a different thing, yeah? So what I've mostly been really wanting to emphasize, and I'm wanting to do this pretty much with all the teaching I'm doing at the moment, is really emphasize the sense-making context, yeah? That what we modern people do, we tend to want to sort of cherry-pick the bits we like, take them out of context, fit them into our already established lives, and sort of try and give a bit of a Buddhist gloss or a spiritual gloss to our otherwise exactly the same life. You know, that is all of our modern temptation, I think, now, is to sort of find bits of things that are useful, especially if they're then sort of affirmed by science. I've just been reading Rupert Sheldrake on the science of meditation, for instance. I'm going to be interviewing him next week. And it's, you know, people get very weak at the knees about science. You know, as soon as science has said, you know, walking upstairs is really good for you, everyone thinks, oh, I should walk upstairs. Do you really need a large-scale, survey to find that out? Anyway, so what I'm wanting to do is do the opposite of that and talk about the context in which meditation takes place from a Buddhist point of view. Yeah? That seems to me to be much more important than the specific techniques, all of which are pretty easy to learn, but without the sense-making context, excuse me, I'm not choked with emotion, without the sense-making context, you'll just get it wrong, actually, to put it sort of boldly. So I wanted to start to try and explore that a bit more. So I was saying this just at Brixton on Wednesday, but as I mentioned last week, I was on a month solitary last summer. And wonderful being on a solitary for a month. I literally hardly saw another person for a month and had no phone or anything like that. And in those conditions, your mind goes much, much deeper, even without you trying. I did kind of try as well, but even without you trying, your mind goes much deeper. And you're confronted by all kinds of realities, psychological realities, so-called existential realities. You're confronted by yourself. That's why you go on a solitary retreat, is to be confronted by yourself and by your experience, which is all you've ever got direct purchase on, is yourself and your experience. Yeah? So we go on solitary retreat to confront that more deeply. You go on any retreat to do that. If you haven't booked for a retreat, book on the way out today. And when I was walking back from my walk, I went for a short walk every day, and I had that experience, which I've had many times in my life, which is this sense, especially when you're on your own, and especially when you're in a very deserted place, a very beautiful but very deserted place, where no one would hear you scream, like in Alien. Not just space, it's a place where no one will hear you scream, but some of the mountains in Spain, they won't hear you scream yet. And I had that sense of, if I died now, here on this little path, the rocks, the trees, the goats, of which there were quite a few, they wouldn't give a monkey's. I'm in a world in which the world around me doesn't care for me, yeah? Has no interest in me, is completely separate from me. This is not a Buddhist view, yeah? But I was struck by experiencing that again, especially in the midst of being on my own for a month, where you really feel confronted by your mortality more. One of the fundamental ways of growing up as a human being is to be confronted with your own mortality. It's only children that don't know that. And even children have a sense of it very early on. I did. From when I was very, very small, I had a sense of mortality. So in this experience, I sort of, this time I sort of stopped and sort of clocked it. What did I actually think here? And what I thought, and I think what most of us think, is that myself, me, my experience is locked inside me, actually probably even locked inside my brain, and that everything else outside of that is not me, is not consciousness, is inert material which doesn't care about you, which has no connection with you whatsoever. Yeah? That the world and me, the pine trees and me, the wind, the sea, the light on the distant sea, none of that had anything to do with me at all. Yeah? So if I died, a tiny bit of an objective reality would disappear, and the rest of objective reality would continue exactly the same. Yeah? And none of it cares an iota for you. Yeah? This is our modern belief. This is what we've created. It is a belief. It's not a fact. It looks like a fact, but it's a religious belief, effectively, that we cling to. And it's, when you think of it, it's really pretty terrifying. The idea that at the very limits of my skin, that's where life ends for me. Yeah? And that everything else, with the possible exception of human brains, is just lumpen material. Yeah? That is the world we've created, and it's creating, as that view has been established, and you could think of it as going back, to someone like Nietzsche proclaiming that the belief in God has become unbelievable. That world we've created is making us all more and more unhealthy. Yeah? More and more anxious, more and more depressed. Things like self-harm, all sorts of things are rocketing up. Suicide, particularly amongst young men, is rocketing up. Gen Z is supposed to be the most unhealthy generation on record, despite all the mental health interventions that they received. Yeah? What we've done is destroy a context, rather smugly actually, rather sort of triumphantly, thought, God is dead, we know better. Yeah, which is quite hubristic when you think about it, but that's what we've done. There has been real benefits in that. I'm not trying to be anti-science or anti-reason. As soon as you go anti-science or anti-reason, you're prey to irrationality, which is just another kind of foolishness. But that basic idea that I exist only to the limits of my body, and that everything else in the so-called natural world is inert matter, which has no relationship to me at all, is a belief that we've all grown up with now. Yeah? We're the first generations in the world to grow up with this belief, and it's doing us great harm, I think. So that is our context. And as I was saying last week, what happens is we think, okay, I'm the bit of my life is just in this little shell, tiny little shell, possibly even just inside my brain. People are now talking about, can you upload your consciousness onto the cloud? The answer is no. So we can move on from that question. Don't be so silly. Of course you can't. End of story. Anyway, but that is the situation. We create this sort of idea that I'm locked here, and that the world around me is completely alien to me. That allows me to do terrible things to the world, destroy it for my own benefit, because I believe that I'm the only one here that is affected. So I can shop until I drop. We can turn the world, as we have done and are doing, into a mine and a rubbish dump, and that has got planetary boundaries. There'll be only so long that we can do that, and from what I've been reading, that only so long is coming very, very quickly. People are talking now about a major change in the 2030s. I won't go on about that because I've been going on about that a lot, and some of my friends, thank God, have been telling me not to. I have been banned from reading books about the end of civilization. So we draw a curtain for the moment across the end of civilization. So that view, that context that we try to... So what we're trying to do in modern teaching of meditation is, okay, that's all pretty awful, but let's just chill out. Chill the hell out. So we're going to just calm down and breathe. The world is on fire, but we're just fine with that. If we're not careful, that is modern Buddhism. We're going to chill out. Everybody else is racing around, but we're a bit chilled. So when we go shopping, we do it in this kind of Buddha way. When we're buying things on Amazon, we're kind of mindful, click. Everybody else is like, oh my God, they're so good, but we're like chilled out. That is, I'm afraid, easily what modern Buddhism looks like. It's nothing remotely like Buddhism at all. It's like nothing remotely like it. So the metaphor I used last week is a sort of a personal metaphor, which is that, and something I really want to keep emphasizing is this: the context is the background of your experience. Because it's the background of your experience, you don't tend to notice it. That's the whole point of a background. Yeah, you're not supposed to notice it, but it informs all the content. Yeah. So what happens is we Westernized people, we're obsessed with content. So we look at the content. What is meditation? How do I do it? Da, da, da. How will it help my life? What does the science say? That's all the content. But the context completely informs that. But it's a background, so you won't notice it. You won't be able to focus on it even. So my metaphor for it last week was the experience, if you've had it, of having loving parents and a loving family. It's even better if you've had a sort of large family, for all sorts of reasons. But when you have loving parents, what you end up with is happy children who have a great time and explore mainly. Yeah. So if you, I was talking about my friend Sangajit, who has 2 sons and a daughter, and so it's lovely. I went and had a meal with him a while ago. I hope he's online. Hello, Sangajit. I went for a meal with him. It's so lovely to go for a meal with a happy family. I mean, it's now a major achievement, it seems to me. It used to be more common, but now we're so getting distrustful of each other, men and women, gay and straight, black and white, and so on. That a happy family is now becoming a major achievement. But it was very striking. And what's striking about it is his 2 sons, his daughter, they don't cling on to their parents, and they don't say, oh, I'm loved, and so lovely to be loved. They just trash the joint, as I said last week. You have to open the door and the boys just go race out and just destroy everything and race back in again. And that's what it's like if you have that loving context. You feel safe to explore, to test your limits. You like being frightened a bit. If you ever see a toddler, you instinctively grab them and put them over your head, don't you? And they love it because they like to feel a bit frightened. They want to test the edge of what. Whoa, that's quite nice, but you have to find out where that edge is. Yeah. So children who are happy, they explore, they test their limits, they live, basically. You can see they're alive. They're imaginatively alive. They're physically embodied. They're life. And if we're not careful, we lose contact with that more and more as we get older. They're alive. Yeah. What the whole of Buddhism is about being more and more alive. Yeah, in that deep sense that you see in happy children. Yeah. It's only when you're unhappy and that you are not got that sort of container of these loving parents, who you by remember you think of them as tyrants. Oh my God, they keep on telling me to go to bed at night and turn off my phone. Or you until you're about 25, you think, if you had these tyrannical parents who've insisted that you do things like sleep and brush your teeth. It's just outrageous. And that you then about sometimes mid-30s, you sort of think, actually that's been quite good. Yeah. So. Do you see how if you've got that context, which you don't notice and actually probably feel a bit irritated with, you can grow and develop, yeah? What we've got is a context where we cannot feel safe because we've been told that we are not safe and we are not loved, yeah? Absolutely. We've been told for the last 100 and so years that the universe is just dead material that has no connection with us at all, that is not in the slightest bit involved with us, that consciousness is an epiphenomena of the brain, which is really just as basically as a way of saying that what we experience as consciousness is really just brain, electrical, magnetic, whatever they are in the brain, chemical stuff in the brain. That's what it is, yeah? That's what we've been told. And that means we can't let go, yeah? And we can't live because we become like unhappy children who are worried, quickly stressed, hypochondriacal, quick to be anxious, etc., etc. Because we've created a world in which there is no place for us, yeah? There's no safety for us, there's no love in the universe, it's just dead. And one day we'll be dead too, and we'll be dead forever, yeah? Pretty scary world we've created, yeah? So Buddhism is a wholly different context. And to learn meditation, really we need to learn that context and actually actively reimagine it. And I want to come back to that today, about actively reimagining the context. Yeah? So that's why I wanted to focus on this verse. This very day I go for my refuge to the powerful protectors whose purpose is to guard the universe. So whose purpose is to guard the universe. The universe is guarded by these protectors. Yeah? And next week I'll try and say more about what that means, because it's not straightforward, because Buddhism has no belief in any kind of creator god or deity. God is having a bit of a comeback on the quiet at the moment, and I'm trying to call him out. He needs to be pushed back. I get what they mean, but it's not a good thing. Yeah? But he is, interestingly, having quite a quiet comeback, particularly amongst theologians and philosophers. Often the best thinking at the moment is by theologians more than anything. And there's a lot in their arguments, some of them extraordinarily subtle, which I'm personally very interested in. But I don't think God will work. We can't bring him back. It just won't work for us anymore. We've kind of woken up from that metaphor, and I don't think that's going to be doable again. And when you do go back to the metaphor, before you know it, you attract the old bad-tempered guy that we've thought we got away from, unfortunately. That's my own thought, anyway. So this very day, this is what I talked about that last week, this very day, I go for my refuge. Yeah? So I want to say a little bit, mostly today, about one word of the next section, which is I go for my refuge. Yeah? And next week, perhaps, or even today, I don't know, it depends how much time, I'll talk about what refuge means and what powerful protectors means. But this very day, so I said last week, in other words, now, you, with your mind, this very day, irrespective of what other people are doing, what Trump is saying in America, what Putin is saying in Russia, what your mother told you when you were 6, what people are saying on Facebook, this very day, I go for my refuge. In other words, this very day, now, I'm going to work with my mind. Yeah? I'm going to try and change my mind. That's what I'm here to do. Yeah? This very day, irrespective of what anybody else is doing or saying. And by change my mind, I mean I'm going to move from a negative mind to a positive mind, from a constricted mind to an expansive mind, from an alienated and distracted mind to a focused and collected mind. That's what going for refuge means. Meditation is a continuous stream of positive mental events. That's what we're trying to move towards, so that we're continually in a series of opening and broadening positive mental events, yeah? From whether it's love, happiness, contentment, etc., and that those become more and more augmentative, so that your states of mind become ever more positive. Positive is a bit of a weak word, but ever more deepened, ever more unified, ever more compassionate, ever more wise, yeah? Ever more aware. That's what going for refuge means. You go from being less aware to being more aware, less kind to more kind, less wise to being more wise. Yeah? And Buddhism is saying that is the task today, is to do that. Never mind what else you're doing, having lunch, hot date tonight. I keep making that joke, that's a bit worrying. That's because I haven't got one. Hot date about 20 years, 25 years ago. Anyway, let's draw a curtain over that. One has to be so careful with my mind. Whatever else is happening today, Buddhism is saying the main thing you're trying to do today, which of course is also every day, is go from less to more, less wisdom to more wisdom, less compassion to more compassion, less awareness to more awareness. That's your whole job in life. That's what life is for, irrespective of political affiliations, irrespective of identity group, irrespective of anything. That's your life's work. Yeah, that's my life. That's what the Buddhist vision. Yeah, and somehow that vision is bounded in a protected universe, which I'll talk about next week. But this very day, I go for my refuge. Yeah? This very day, I go for my refuge. I go from less to more. Now, I really want to focus on that word, I go. Yeah, I go. The Pali for this is gacchami, which means I go. Yeah, a little bit of Pali scholarship. That's actually, I know about 4 words. Anyway, I go, gacchami, I go. Yeah, and that's very, very important, that it's I go, yeah? So it's not I believe, yeah? So if you're a deist, if you believe in a God or Jesus or gods in the literal sense, you would start with El Credo, I believe, yeah? El Credo, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church, etc., yeah? I believe. That's how you start. You start with I believe. Buddhism doesn't really have a word that you can translate it really as believe. Buddhism says, I go. Yeah? And then if you're a philosopher and want to think about things, and I've been reading quite a lot of philosophy recently, you say, El cogito, I think. Yeah, I think. I think about stuff. I think, yeah. Buddhism says, gacchami, I go. I act, in other words. So it's really important to make that Buddhist distinction between I believe, I think, and I act. Yeah? Now I want to try and... Do I want to yet? I'll nuance that a bit. Which bit shall I choose? And then we'll go back to it in a minute. Let's just keep it simple for now. So when Buddhism says gacchami, I go, it's then saying I act. It's not that I think about stuff, valuable though that might be. I'll come back to thinking in the second half because I do think that's very important to clarify that. It's not saying I believe in stuff. I believe in the Apostolic Church and so on. It's saying I act, I go, I change my mind now from less to more. Yeah. Now the only caveat to put into that now is when you say Buddhism says I go, I act. Buddhism includes your mind in action, yeah? And Western thought doesn't. So our Western idea of action is doing stuff, snowboarding, whatever it is, doing the washing up, doing stuff, yeah? So Buddhism talks about actions of body, speech and mind. So you act with your body, you act with your speech. So Buddhism considers your speech as action. So you can speak in an unkind way or an unclear way, and you can speak in a clear way and in a kind way. You can speak in a way that creates harmony and unity and community around you, or you can speak in a way that destroys harmony and community and unity around you. You can do that. Speech is like a magic act. I've been listening to quite a lot of philosophers talk about language, and it's very mysterious language. How did we end up being language animals like this? The assumption used to be that we learnt it like you teach a dog, sit, and gradually they learn what sit means. Then you say shake, and they gradually, by pulling up their paw, you learn what shake means. Human language can't have been learnt like that, because language refers to itself and refers to, it can't have been made like that. So nobody really understands where language comes from. But Buddhism puts a lot of emphasis on speech, on what your speech does. Your speech will change the world every time you use it. That's why it's very important to be careful what you say, not in a kind of silly way, but in a genuine way, to speak in ways that increase value, increase community, increase a sense of meaning, not in ways that decrease value, decrease community, and decrease a sense of meaning. Yeah? You can speak in such a way as, and by speak I mean write, put on Facebook, share on TikTok, etc. You can do all those things in ways in which to destroy value and meaning, to be cynical about those things, to destroy the idea that human beings can make progress, for instance, which is a contemporary idea that progress is an illusion, etc., etc. Yeah? So Buddhism puts a lot of emphasis on speech, and it puts a lot of emphasis on mind. So when Buddhism says, gacchami, I go, it means I try and change the actions of my mind from dwelling on an argument yesterday to trying to forgive, from worrying about an interview tomorrow to trying to relax. That's a going for refuge in your mind. Then you go for refuge in your speech by choosing not to say you're just but saying, tell me that again, I didn't quite get what you said there. Or sometimes it is, actually, do you know what, we keep on having this conversation and I need to I don't really agree with you there. Yeah, it's finding the sort of, sometimes the courage to say, can we stop talking like this again? It's not helpful. How can we help each other now in this speech act? So speech is an action that creates the world. Yeah? And then action in Buddhism is your actions of body. Yeah? What I do I help with the washing up, or do I suddenly drift away? I have friends that can suddenly disappear. That's weird. How do they do that? As soon as there's washing up to do, you think, that's weird. They're gone. I don't resent it, obviously, because that would be not going for refuge. Yeah? I do, I'm afraid. Okay, so let's have a go at meditating and try to go for refuge. This very day, I go for my refuge, gacchami. So that means particularly in what we're doing with our mind. And then I'll try and say more about aspects of that. So I want to say two more things about this word gacchami, I go for my refuge. And then next week, is it next week? Yes, it is next week. I want to talk more about the powerful protectors whose purpose is to guard the universe, which for me is so vital that we reimagine that context. And we'll finish today with beginning that reimagination, because context changes content. Yeah? And context, by definition, is something you don't notice. It's the background to your life which creates the foreground. So happy children who grow and live and thrive and adventure and test their limits is because they experience this context around them that allows them to do that. Children who cling to their parents, who are nervous, who are timid and so on, it's to do with a lack of that context. Yeah? So you have to literally reimagine that context at the level of psychology, but I think one needs to reimagine that context at the existential level in order to be well, yeah, in order to thrive. We put too much emphasis on my own particular mental health in the moment. We don't realise that that's being shaped by our context. Yeah? Actually, more and more people are talking about this, but we need not to just think about it and talk about it, but actively recreate a new context. And that's why I'm wanting to sort of talk about this line from the puja. So this very day I go for my refuge. This very day I go, gacchami, I go, yeah? And I said earlier on that it means I go, not I believe, and not I think. Yeah? I just want to just slightly nuance that idea of I think, because Buddhism has got a very detailed understanding of what think means. Yeah? And we in the West haven't. We just got this word thinking, thoughts and so on, which is very, very crude idea that you're thinking. And if you're not careful, with our westernized view, you can think that meditation is about not thinking, almost about trying to make your mind go blank. I've met so many people who think, I can't meditate because I'm thinking so much, or my mind's so full of thought, so I can't meditate. Yeah? As if what you're trying to do is sort of turn off the computer. We've got this terrible habit now to compare the human mind to a computer. It's nothing remotely like a computer. Yeah, it's nothing remotely like a computer. But somehow we've got stuck in that metaphor. So when we think about meditation, we think it's like the screen going blank. We aren't a screen. Yeah? It's weird that one has to point that out. Like, duh. But we aren't a screen. We aren't a computer. Our minds are nothing remotely like computers. Otherwise, we would have been able to create consciousness by now, and we will never be able to do that. So I just want to clarify a bit about what Buddhism means by think. So when it says Gacchami, I go, not I think, what Buddhism is saying is that I change my life. Yeah? I don't just think about stuff. Yeah? What is the purpose of philosophy unless it's to change your life? As I say, I've been reading quite a bit of philosophy recently. I seem to have got back into it again. And after a while you think, what is the point of all this? What if that is true? What if this is true? The value of philosophy is so that you can apply it to your life. It's interesting, in Buddhism there is no word that translates as philosophy. And that's because the Buddhist project is to change your mind, not to think stuff. Yeah? In fact, the Buddha was renowned even in ancient India for the one that didn't speculate. The Buddha would mostly respond to all sorts of our modern ideas by just going, okay, yeah, but what are you doing now? What in this very day? How are you going for refuge? How are you becoming more? How are you living that out? If you believe that consciousness isn't an epiphenomena of the brain, how does that look like in your life? What it would actually look like would be compassion. Yeah? And that's what he's interested in, not sort of groovy ideas about consciousness. But Buddhism doesn't mean and isn't an anti-intellectual thing. It's not an anti-thought matter. Yeah? One of the great dangers of any so-called religion, to use the R word, is that they're anti-intellectual and anti-science and anti-reason. Yeah? That's why people have struggled to get away from them, so that they can create the physical sciences and so on, to get away from superstition, Nutsville. Yeah? I don't think that's a technical term. So you can see that there was a real need to break from it, to get away from superstition, irrationality, etc., etc. And Buddhist tradition, and any tradition, can easily get mixed up with an idea that it's not about thought. Yeah? So Buddhism has two prime words that mean thought in English. One is vitarka and one is prapuncture. Yeah? These are two Pali words. Vitarka means reasoning, broadly speaking. It means the capacity. It actually means V means divided and tarka means reasoning. So it literally means divided reasoning, which doesn't sound so good. What it means is the ability that human beings have to step back from their experience and reflect on it, which is absolutely crucial to human growth, absolutely crucial to going for refuge. The capacity to think, I am getting in a bad mood. I do this when I get tired, ill, if late at night, if I'm hungry. I am now getting into a bad mood. I need to make sure I step out of that habit now. I need to do something. Yeah? That's you using your vitarka, your capacity to reflect on your experience and actually change your life for the better. That's what going for refuge with the mind looks like. It's using that capacity you have, which is only flickeringly present, I'm afraid. We can sometimes reason and sometimes we simply won't. It's not that we can't, we just won't. We're just having a lula and we will not reason, And sometimes you almost, I say you, I also mean me, I mean everyone, we sort of almost push ourselves into that. We just press the F it button and just push it into, actually, I can't reason anymore. I'm going to have a big lula and everyone was going to suffer until I get my way. Yeah, that is not Buddhism. Yeah. So vitarka means that the capacity to, as it were, step back from your experience, see where it's going, and guide it by your mind. Yeah, absolutely crucial to any well-lived life is, if I have another glass of ... I will ... If I keep on the computer late at night, I will dysregulate. So, all of those things. And Buddhist practice is about strengthening that capacity to reason and make that capacity of vitarka more and more wise, more and more helpful to you and other people, more and more beneficial. Yeah? That is the practice of becoming wise. Yeah? Very, very important. So when Buddhism says I go, it means I go, I create vitarka. I think more deeply, more clearly, more usefully, less reactively, more deeply, and so on. I want to emphasize that because easily people think that Buddhism is about being in the moment. It is not. Yeah? I don't know where it comes from, that idea, but it's not about that. It actually doesn't actually mean anything when people say being in the moment. It's just a kind of groovy thing people say. Yeah? If it does mean anything at all, it just means being absorbed, doesn't it? If you see children playing, you don't say, "Are you being in the moment?" They'd be like, "What? I mean, what are you talking about? You've just ruined it." When you say to a child, "Are you having a good time?" They look, it's really annoying. All you've done is interrupt their good time to ask them to reflect on it in abstract universal terms, which is really annoying. Yeah. So if you say to your child, "Are you now being in the moment?" They were just like, "Get away." I remember that, I probably told last time, when Alex was really young, she's in the bath and she suddenly said to me, "Matranda, why don't you go into the kitchen and listen to your music?" In other words, go away. I'm trying to have a good time here and you're an adult, boring adult. It's just, So vitarka is using that kind of, that capacity to look at your experience, as it were, objectively, and turn it towards the going for refuge. Turn it towards the wise, not the unwise, the compassionate, not the uncompassionate, the forgiving, not the hateful. And that is what human beings must train in, because we have other kind of pulls that are not like that at all. All of us have very strong pulls against that vitarka. We want to just get what we want very much. It's only because we're at the moment, very fortunate, because situations are relatively comfortable for most of us, that we can do that. Soon they won't be, probably. So we need to train in our capacity to reason in this sense of vitarka. Yeah? Now the other word is prapuncture, and that's another word that you might translate as thought. And it's really that's the issue. It's not vitarka, because you can use your vitarka to come back into meditation, can't you? So when I say, when I'm leading the meditation, okay, just feel that your body on the chair just now, I'm basically becoming your vitarka and guiding you back into your experience. Yeah? And you can do that for yourself. That's what meditation is, very much. It's using your capacity to look at your experience and guide it usefully. You're trying to train that to come back into your experience, not just sort of wool gather and drift off from your experience. Prapuncture means literally spreading out. They think it actually is that gesture, because the word is etymologically connected with your hand. So it's probably, when the Buddha taught this, he just said it's like your mind does that, isn't it? Yeah? That your mind just spreads out. It's not a reasoned working out what's best for you just now and how do you do that. It just spreads out, connecting the past with the future, a worry with a regret, a fantasy with another fantasy. Our human minds, they spread out like that, yeah? And that can become sort of a happy burbling, or it can become an agonized self-criticism that just keeps on spreading out and touching up more and more, yeah? So it's prapuncture that we need to step out of, not vitarka, yeah? It's a very, very important distinction, actually. Otherwise, we start to think that Buddhism somehow is about not thinking, which is actually positively unhelpful. It's a question of how to think. What we're trying to do is step out of this tendency of the mind to spread out and free associate, really. The Western word for it now tends to be rumination, to ruminate, yeah? And you can ruminate, that can become your great project in life, is to ruminate about why you're unhappy. Yeah? Very, very common, yeah? I was happy a minute ago, why am I not happy now? I was happy, I should be happy, it's a lovely day, how come I'm not happy? And you can just go on and on and on. I've done it myself, so I wouldn't recommend it. So that is prapuncture, yeah? That's prapuncture. So we're trying to when we meditate, we're trying to use vitarka. One more thing I want to say, and then we'll meditate again. And that is this great matter of what going for refuge looks like in practice. It's all very well to say the words, but what does it look like in practice? You're trying to change the whole drift and tendency of your mind, your body, your intuitions, your instincts from something unwise, unhelpful, often chaotic, often conflicted, into something wise, helpful, harmonious, even beautiful, and non-conflicted. Yeah? That's what you're always trying to do, and you're trying to do that this very day, in this moment, in this conversation, in that difficult meeting, in this whatever it is. Yeah, that's what you're trying to do. But you can't do that before the event. What I notice more and more is people sort of think that they should be able to live before they can live, weirdly. We are very weird as modern westernized people. So for instance, you can go and learn management skills and learn how to manage people without ever managing anyone. Yeah? Or so they say, until you have one of those managers and they're a nightmare. Because it's all just a theory, and then they try to apply the theory to people who are nothing like theories. Yeah? But we've got this idea that you can learn something, management, and then you can go off and manage people. So we've got this modern view that we can sort of learn how to do something, and then we can do it. Yeah? It's just not possible. Yeah? You cannot learn apart from through your experience. Really, that's how human beings learn things. It's through their experience, which means you're going to get it wrong. And it means you're going to get it wrong a lot of the time, yeah? Because you're trying to learn. Yeah? That's a bit messy and a bit uncomfortable, especially if you try and think that through, which luckily I haven't got time to do. But that's uncomfortable and messy, that you'll get things wrong, that you keep getting things wrong, that you try this and you'll overdo it that way, you'll underdo it this way. Wouldn't it be nice if we learnt all that in the quietness of heaven knows where, some sort of heaven, and then managed to go off and live? Yeah, that somehow is our idea. I think this is one of the reasons why I'm uneasy about the metaphor of healing, because it's a static metaphor. Like I could just take time off my life, heal, bash, and then, okay, back onto life again. It's a very bad use of a metaphor. Static metaphors are very problematic. It's not like that. You can't sort yourself out and then go and live with that sorted out mind. You're not sorted out. Get a grip with it. That's how it is. So I had an experience of this recently that's very striking for me. I'm writing another book with the Honour Archer. The most difficult book I've tried to write is more sort of philosophical. And I am not a philosopher. I have a very woozy grasp of facts. I can tell you never mind philosophy. I'm great on atmosphere, but facts for me are just like a particular brand of fiction. Numbers even more so. Numbers are more like rhymes to me, which is really difficult if you need to fly somewhere at a particular day. I've just got to the end of what is a sort of first draft of the book. It took years to write because it's more than a first draft. And I've just the other day started going back to the introduction and doing a third, fourth draft on it. Yeah, and it's rubbish. I go back to the introduction and think, who wrote this rubbish? It's not rubbish, but it's not very good. There's all, think, why am I even talking about this in this section? What am I trying to do here? It's very striking. What I'd like to have done is learned how to write this book. I'm in a philosophy mood. I would like to have learned how to do that and then go off and write a book. But you can't do it like that. As you write a book, you learn what it means to write. The only way to learn to be a good writer is to write a lot, and pretty much all the time, every day, and keep on doing it badly until it gradually gets better and better. That's a lifetime's work. You can't sort of go off and do a course on writing, then learn how to write as if it's an abstraction, and then go off and write. And your life is exactly like that. Yeah? You can't learn how to live this wise, kind, Buddhist-y, kind of in touch but marvellously wise life without trying it out. And that's why you need a sangha like this. You need people around you. You need a context in which to get it wrong, in which to try meditation, not do it well, find out more, talk to your teachers, make friends with people, come along again, learn again, go on retreat, do it. So often on retreat you feel like, oh, that's what meditation is. I had completely got it wrong. You cannot learn it abstracted from life. You have to live through things. You have to write a bad first draft of your life. Unfortunately, that is your youth. Which is a shame. I keep on thinking, why didn't I have more sex? Anyway, let's not go there. Answers on the postcard. Unfortunately, the first draft is your youth. Now, if you're not careful, the whole draft is your life. If you're not careful, you will not learn. Yeah, but you try to keep on learning as you live, and you need really supportive conditions to do that, because our human instinct is to reiterate mistakes, not to learn from them. We tend to get into the same kind of problem again and again. I do and you do. Yeah, so all of us need a context in which we can actually learn, which means actually living through mistakes we make and forgiving ourselves, forgiving other people, giving each other a bit more rope, learning to understand each other and ourselves more deeply, learning what going for refuge looks like in process, in life. It's not something you do separate from life. It's not like a management course where you ostensibly learn how to manage people and then you go and try it with actual people. There's no way of doing that. It's just a complete sort of wrong idea. Yeah? So what I want to do to finish is see if we can start that learning by reimagining. We're going to go a little bit over time, I'm afraid, which means I'll get into trouble, but never mind. Nobody can pull me off. Maniacal laugh. So what I want to do, it's gone a bit of a fast today, is see if we can just sit and instead of imagining the world that we've created, which is that after the boundaries of me, everything is dead, apart from brains around ourselves, and actually that's just a brain activity. Let's just see if we can imagine that everything around us is conscious, which heavens above, that is the most important thing we've got just in this room. It's consciousness. We're going to try and imagine that everything is somehow consciousness. So let's just try and do that. Yeah?